Hari Om. Welcome to part 2 of Nelson Mandela, A Long Walk to Freedom. In the previous session, I had told you Mandela's role as a visionary. We had also talked about the inauguration ceremony where all the leaders from different countries all over the world had gathered to bestow their wishes upon the newly formed government of South Africa. The other day I had told you Rome was not built in a day. Very true. In the story you have seen so far how these legendary revolutionaries, the martyrs, the patriots, invariably they shed their blood, they sacrificed their dreams, they underwent, they had so much of struggles. And now in this part, we are going to continue with the rest of the story. But before I start off with today's class again, I have a question to ask to all of you. What is the price that a person generally pays for the dreams to come true? Well, the answer is very simple. You cannot measure your dreams in terms of materialistic pleasures again. If you have dreamt to be a topper, there are a lot of sacrifices that you need to make at the very basic level. If you have dreamt to be a sketch artist, even then you have many sacrifices to make. Similarly, when the question is about freedom, these people, these stalwarts, I must say, they did not even bother to think about their own lives. Mandela talks about these people, he eulogizes, he appreciates them, he is full of commendations for all of them, and he calls them diamonds. All the past revolutionaries, all the past martyrs have been an inspiration for Nelson Mandela. And it is their courage that Mandela had emulated. It is their vision to see a free South Africa, and look at that. Finally, the day arrived when South Africa was a free country. South Africa was a free declared state, and by state here I of course mean country. And South Africa was a new government that functioned independently without being daunted by anybody whatsoever. And this is the struggle that Mandela encountered, that Mandela underwent, and this is the way in which finally that led to the emancipation of so many South African people. Let's continue. It is from these comrades in the struggle that I learned the meaning of courage. Time and again, I have seen men and women risk and give their lives for an idea. And that is where we need to learn a lesson also. Very often we judge people from what we see. And this is where we go wrong. Again, to quote William Shakespeare, he had very clearly stated in his play The Merchant of Venice, all that glisters is not gold. Often you have heard that told. Each time you go on to judge a person by how he or she looks, each time you commit a mistake in judging that person. A person might not look very burly. A person might not look very rugged. Yet, may be very strong, may be very courageous. Gallantry lies in the heart. And that is where Mandela felicitates all those revolutionaries, all those patriots, all those martyrs, all those people who practically dreamt of seeing, visualizing an independent South Africa. And time and again, he had seen men and women risking their lives. And this is where the writer brings forth the noble idea of self-sacrifice. In order to gain something, in order to achieve something, there must be a price that a person should be ready to pay. And in that process of gaining freedom of the self, one cannot afford to be narrow-minded and being gripped by the ramshackles of materialism or short-sightedness. A person has to be far more far-sighted, as the goal is very extensive. Literature, as I always told you, talks about a lot of values, and at this point of time, this is the real value of humanity that the story offers to us. I have seen men stand up to attacks and torture without breaking, showing a strength of resilience that defiles the imagination. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. Be it Bhagat Singh, be it Rajguru, be it Nelson Mandela, be it any freedom fighter who had a bigger vision, who had a greater goal, could never have afforded to have a breakdown so easily. And that is what he witnessed in his people also. All those martyrs, all those patriots, all those visionaries who dreamt of a free state. By state, I mean a country, a situation, free self. Take for example the concept of Purna Swaraj that was envisioned in India. And for that one concept of Swaraj, so many leaders had laid their lives. They never worried. They were never bothered about the temporary pleasures. Because in this world, the materialistic pleasures are very temporary. But what we see at the end of the day is a bigger goal. So all these people, they were very courageous. They were very strong. They were gallant. And this is not the absence of fear, but how you win over, how you have the courage to win over that fear that broods in your heart. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid. Yes, that's a very important line said by Nelson Mandela. But he who conquers that fear. As a student, your ambition is to top the charts. But in that process, many a times you are afraid of mathematics. Oh my God, mathematics. Oh my God, English. This, oh my God factor. Do not brood this oh my God factor to a large extent. Definitely, problems are meant to be solved. Life has no meaning without problems. But once you conquer that fear, you emerge as a topper. Similarly, these people, They conquered that fear of suppression when they were being suppressed. That fear of suppression had to be overcome by these people to emerge as courageous, gallant lords. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin. And from this paragraph onwards, we will shift to the basic values that this particular story has to offer to us. Nobody is born hating each other on the basis of the color of the skin or the background or his religion. People must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. Very important. In Hindi, there is a kahavat, there is a saying in Hindi, एक सच्चा नास्तिक एक सच्चा आस्तिक बन सकता है. Now, as you know, astik means somebody who has got immense faith in God. And a nastik is an atheist who does not believe in God. In order to believe in God, the supreme power, the supreme glory, one has to be a disbeliever in God. Similarly, in order to germinate the feelings of love, one has to learn how to hate. And probably that is the first value that Nelson Mandela showcases at this point of time. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. Absolutely correct. For all those people who are watching the video, you do not know me. You are only watching the video, and this virtual representation is what you know about me. Now my question is, how is a man bound to another man? My dear friends, a man is bound to another man only by love. Of course, you do not know me. I do not know you. But that one bond of love makes the society strong. That one feeling of social camaraderie, societal well-being makes us come closer. And that is Mandela's point. Because the feeling of love is understood by all. And to quote, I must say, a smile is a language which even a baby understands. So if a baby can understand the universal language of smile, why can't the majority of human beings understand the basic, pure feeling of love? Even in the grimmest times in prison, when my comrades and I were pushed to our limits, I would see a glimmer of humanity in one of the guards. Literature, as I told you, is a reflection of life. Literature, as I told you, is an evolution, is an evolution of values. And this is what he tells. You talk about any Indian revolutionary, you talk about any African revolutionary, you talk about anybody who had been fighting for his freedom, had to encounter oppression, had to encounter hatred. But even then, the person whom Nelson Mandela saw torturing him in the prison at least had an iota of humanity present in him. Perhaps just for a second, but it was enough to reassure me and keep me going, and that is important. I don't know how many of you watched that movie, Legend of Bhagat Singh, but if you watched it, the movie in which Ajay Devgan was in the lead role, the scene where Bhagat Singh, Rajguru and Sukhdev are being taken to the gallows, And when Bhagat Singh, along with all the others, was to be executed, the jailer had drops of tears in his eyes. Basically, there were tears down the jailer's cheeks also, and that is a proof of humanity. No man can be a stern hater throughout, but yes, man can always be a lover someday, and that is Mandela's point. The greatest power that can rule on the world is the power of love, in association with the power of humanity. And if that does not happen, society somehow has got no meaning. Man's goodness is a flame that can be hidden but never extinguished, and that is very important, my friends. There is nothing called a good child or a bad child. There is nothing called a good man or a bad man. It's all about ideas. Ideas and thoughts can be good and not good. But ultimately there is an element of goodness present in every man, every woman. Therefore, according to Mandela at this point of time, we see that goodness cannot be extinguished. In life, every man has twin obligations. Obligations to his family, to his parents, to his wife, children. He has an obligation to his people, his community. Absolutely. Be it anybody among you. You have a role to play in your family. Be it any family member, you have responsibilities to undertake. And at the same time, you are a society being. And you have a great role to play in the society as well. And that is what Mandela talks about. His community, his country. Just as we Indians keep India on the forefront each time, in adverse times, in times of war, in times of national emergency, we are Indians first. Similarly, according to Nelson Mandela, he was a South African first. And that is the zeal. That is the fire that kept on kindling in his heart. In a civil and humane society, each man is able to fulfill those obligations according to his own inclinations and abilities. But in a country like South Africa, it was almost impossible for a man of my birth and color to fulfill both of those obligations. It was very difficult because they were dark people. And I had told you the other day how the world was segregated into the whites and the blacks, how the whites always wanted to subdue, suppress the dark people. So there had been many, instances where even Nelson Mandela had to encounter these obnoxities, these issues. In South Africa, a man of color who attempted to live as a human being was punished and isolated. Who are you? You are basically a reason to celebrate. You are a human being with immense potentials. You are a human being with immense skills, capabilities. What if you are stopped and curbed just because you are black? Do you call that to be justice? Well, I don't think so. You have the dream to fulfill. You have that freedom of dreaming. You have your own aspirations. You have your own ambitions, which you should fulfill. But that was not how it happened in South Africa. And that is what drove Nelson Mandela to fight for this social cause, for the emancipation and freedom of his people, his nationals, and his community and his country. So, a man who tried to fulfill his duty, he was isolated. In South Africa, a man who tried to fulfill his duty to his people was inevitably ripped off from his family. He was ripped from his family. He was truncated. He was separated from his family and his home and was forced to live a life apart. Now, that is what we call a rebel. Sorry for the interruption. That is what we call a rebel. Now, who is a rebel? Somebody who tries to go against the stereotypical conventions. Somebody who tries to bring newness into the society is possibly a threat to the society. And that is how Nelson Mandela became a threat to his own society. And that is the reason why he tells through the story that what is basically important, more than being socially powerful, it is more important to be a good human being. More than being wealthy, definitely money is important, but more than judging a man by his wealth, there should be this wealth of character that man should be endowed with. And that is the reason why he tells a twilight existence of secrecy and rebellion. I did not in the beginning choose to place my people above my family. Mandela was also a normal man. He also wanted to lead a normal life with his family, with his friends, his colleagues. But in attempting to serve my people, I found that I was prevented from fulfilling my obligations as a son, a brother, a father, and a husband. What is the more grave cause? Don't narrow yourself to the obligations of the family only. Because ultimately, you are going to emerge as a leader, and a leader can never be narrow-minded. Remember, Mandela could not have afforded to be narrow-minded. He had his entire community to think about. He had the entire country to look after. I was not born with a hunger to be free. I was born free, and that's a very important line. When you are born in the world, there are no shackles that basically bind you. Then why do you get restricted in the name of caste, in the name of creed, in the name of religion, in the name of color, in the name of sex as well? And it's not surprising if I say that in a country like India, we have been encountering the same problems that we are discussing in the story right now. The Britishers had ruled us rather, for over 200 to 50 years. And today, we are free. But this freedom that Mandela talks about is symbolic freedom. At this point of time, Mandela talks to the readers, talks to the people symbolically. This freedom is not literal freedom that he talks about. He talks about a free soul. Everybody has got his own way of imagining. Everybody has got his own way of reacting. Free to run in the fields near my mother's hut. Free to swim in the clear streams that ran through my village. Free to roast mealies under the stars and ride the broad backs of the slow moving bulls. Enjoy nature. Nature and man are no different. We are a part of nature. So, what should practically stop us from enjoying our own country? What should practically stop us from enjoying nature? Nothing. And that is Mandela's point here. As long as I obeyed my father and abided by the customs of my tribe, I was not troubled by the laws of man or God. And this is where Mandela raises another point. My dear friends, let me tell you, he who quietly complies with adversities in a dumb manner is not a threat. But the moment you raise your voice against something that is going wrong around you, mark my words, wrong around you, at that point of time, you become a threat to such people. Till Nelson Mandela enjoyed in his own periphery, there was no problem. But the moment Mandela started questioning people or even things or situations that were not correct, he became a possible threat. Threat to his people, threat to law, most importantly. It was only when I began to learn that my boyhood freedom was an illusion, and that is when he realized that his freedom was just freedom in namesake. It was a freedom for namesake. When I discovered as a young man that my freedom had already been taken from me, that I began to hunger for it. Now in India, for example, when we are born as Indians, when we are born as human beings, why should we be stopped from education? Why should we be stopped from anything positive that happens to us? That's not the point. Even these South African people, they were oppressed. They were suppressed by the colonial power. The colonial power, the whites, they never wanted this country to be free. And that is then when Mandela realized that his freedom, that he thought that he was free, was an illusion. Finally, at first, as a student, I wanted freedom only for myself. The transitory freedoms of being able to stay out at night. Transitory means something that is temporary, which is not permanent. Read what I pleased and go where I chose. These are all very temporary things that any boy would want to do. Go to somebody's birthday party, return late at night, not to be stopped by anybody whatsoever. But it is only then when Mandela started growing up and when he received real knowledge of life that he realized that freedom was a concept that was far, far more extensive. Freedom was a concept that was far more necessary than these things. The freedom of existence, the freedom of dreaming independently, the freedom of doing something independently for one's own benefit. All these things were at a stake. And that is how that small crevice or a small hole in the wall started becoming larger, and the small flame of fire started converting itself into a bonfire. And it is then later, as a young man in Johannesburg, I yearned for the basic and honorable freedoms of achieving my potential, of earning my keep, of marrying and having a family, the freedom of not to be obstructed in a lawful life. Everybody has got certain dreams about himself. Everybody has got certain ambitions to fulfill. Even Mandela had so. But then I slowly saw that not only was I not free, but my brothers and sisters were also not free. And this is where Mandela's narrow concept of freedom started widening. Because when you do not get water, you look around here and there, searching for some well, searching for some stream, some pond, whatever. And finally, when you look around you and you find that everybody is almost thirsty, it is then when somebody takes that initiative to dig up a well. Because you do not find water anywhere. There was no hope. By the time Mandela grew up, there was no hope. He did not see himself growing up fruitfully in a fruitful society, because each person of South Africa was suppressed. And he could make out that ultimately nobody was free. He wasn't free. The people around him were not free. Till now he was defining freedom in a very narrow manner. The freedom of choosing a profession, the freedom of marrying the kind of girl he liked. But those things were very narrow. Freedom ultimately had a very broad perspectives. So finally, when he saw that nobody was free, I saw that it was not just my freedom that was curtailed, stopped, but the freedom of everyone who looked like I did. And this is the most shameful thing that could ever happen to any man. We don't design our looks, do we? I may look in a different manner, you may look in a different manner. But that is not in our hands. That's in the hands of nature. That's in the hands of God. And that is the reason why we say beauty is very gullible. Looks are very deceptive. And what a shame, Mandela was black, and everybody who was black, who was a Negro, was stopped. And that is what kindled the fire in Mandela's heart and helped him, instigated him, provoked him to come up with a simple question: why? Why will I be stopped on the basis of my color? Why should I be stopped just because I'm a Negro? Am I not a man? Am I not important? Am I not comprising the same nature as the others? And at this point of time, there is a bit of satire that the writer has introduced, a bit of criticism again. And this criticism is like a slap across the cheeks of all those people who judge people by their looks. Because ultimate development does not come from how I look. That resides in my brain, in my thought process, in my heart, in my emotions, and most importantly, my intentions. And at this point of time, Mandela joined the African National Congress. So when he saw that nobody was treated well, when he saw that his people were not treated properly, they were maltreated, they were ill-treated, he decided to join politics. And that is when the hunger for my own freedom became the greater hunger for the freedom of my people. And this is how that narrow concept of freedom widened and became a national cause, people's cause for the society. I'm sorry. It was this desire for the freedom of my people to live their lives with dignity, very important. The one thing that each one of us has is self-respect and dignity. If you cannot give respect to another person, if you cannot give respect to a fellow human being, you do not qualify as a human being. And he understood that cause, he understood that reason. Dignity and self-respect that animated my life, that transformed a frightened young man into a bold one. You know, in a fight, when somebody keeps on attacking you, and finally you hit the wall, there are basically two options left for you. Either you get killed or you strike back. How do you strike back? By using your intellect. Again, in Sanskrit, there is a very beautiful saying, Buddhi jasya balang tasya. He who has got intellect is considered to be powerful. Mandela had that power in him. He had that intellect in him. He had that audacity in him, that courage in him, that knowledge in him. So ultimately, it is knowledge that makes you powerful. So Mandela transformed into a bold individual that drove a law-abiding attorney to become a criminal. You may ask me, was Mandela a criminal? Maybe yes, because he questioned the law. He questioned the law. He raised questions. He challenged the law to assert his own existence. Maybe that is what made him a criminal in the eyes of the law, because law was one-sided. That turned a family-loving husband into a man without a home. So somewhere Mandela also paid the price. He had to be separated from his family. He had to lead a tranquil and sequestered life. And you cannot have everything at the same time. You have to pay a couple of prices, to achieve the greater goals in life. And this is what he was doing. I am no more virtuous or self-sacrificing than the next man, but I found that I could not even enjoy the poor and limited freedoms I was allowed when I knew my people were not free. And this is what made him emerge as a philanthropic individual. Now, who is a philanthropic individual? Somebody who takes care of the community, somebody who sympathizes with the fellow human beings, somebody who empathizes with the fellow human beings. So, in today's discussion, we have come so far where the real definition of freedom has to be understood. To quote Rabindranath Tagore again, if I have to say, where the mind is without fear, is a very beautiful poem. There you have a line where knowledge is free. The knowledge is free does not mean that you do not pay your fees for the knowledge you receive. No, this means knowledge is free for everyone. Each one is, each one deserves to accumulate knowledge. And that brings freedom. And that is the definition of real freedom. And when you receive real knowledge, you will see that the narrow-minded concept of freedom automatically widens. Freedom is indivisible, rather, he tells here. The chains of any one of my people were the chains on all of them. Very important this is. Mandela says that if one man thought he was not free, would result into the lack of freedom for the entire community, and that is very important. When you want to do something great, you have to learn to break the shackles. You have to challenge your fear. And that is what Mandela did. The chains on all of my people were chains on me, and that is how a leader feels. And that is what makes Mandela emerge as a true leader. I knew that the oppressor, now these lines happen to be very important, must be liberated just as surely as the oppressed. Now, who is an oppressor? Somebody who continuously oppresses you, hates you, tries to dominate you. Do you know why he does that to you? Why does he do that to you? He does it to you because you are his threat. So basically, sympathy, according to Mandela, should actually go out to the oppressor first and then the oppressed. Because the oppressed allows somebody to oppress you. A man who takes away another man's freedom is a prisoner of hatred. Important line. We are all born free. Each one of us has got his own ambition. Each one of us has got his own dream. And if somebody comes and stops you, no, you're not supposed to do it. According to Mandela, the person doing so is a convict of hatred himself. And that is the reason why he treats the other bitterly. And that is the power of literature. That is the power of literature at this point of time, because it is again arousing the values that relate to life. Because life is all about spreading love, happiness. If you spread love, if you spread happiness, everybody is smiling around. Where is the place for hatred? And then he tells he is locked behind the bars of prejudice. Important. Remember, each person maltreating the other is prejudiced, is biased. Come on. Break the shackles of biasness and prejudice and learn treating everybody equally. There will be no sorrow in the world. There will be no penury in the world, no misery in the world. Develop feelings like kindness, sympathy, empathy, help each other out. And that is again a lesson that Mandela, comes up with. Had Mandela not dreamt of a free South Africa, this day would never have come when all the international dignitaries had mustered up together to celebrate the freedom of a free nation. So ultimately, according to Mandela, a person who hates the other himself is locked behind the bars. of prejudice and narrow-mindedness. I am not truly free if I am taking away someone else's freedom. Absolutely. Today you look at Indians. To give an example, to cite an example, let me tell you, Indians are everywhere. They are in NASA. They are in all the leading institutions. They are into academics. They are into textile. They are into mining. They are everywhere. Even the CEO of Google happens to be an Indian. And look what the Britishers had been doing to us for more than 200 to 50 years. They had been oppressing us. Shouldn't I say that they were themselves locked behind the bars of hatred and prejudice? Because somewhere at the back of their minds they had understood, I can see an Indian trying to surpass me, and that is what makes them narrow-minded. Where is the glitch? If everybody is treated nicely, if everybody is treated kindly, don't you think respect for each and every person develops more? Nevertheless, he tells here, he feels that I'm not truly free if I'm taking away someone else's freedom, just as surely as I am not free when my freedom is taken away from me. The oppressed and the oppressor alike are robbed of their humanity. And this is how we come to the end of the chapter, with this last line being very important. He tells here that the oppressor, somebody who oppresses, and the oppressed, who is being oppressed, both are victims to hatred. They are victims to hatred and they are robbed of their humanity. Now, what is humanity according to Mandela, if you ask me, is very simple. I'm sorry. If you ask me, humanity according to Mandela is nothing but conferring love and respect to everybody. So my dear friends, with that we come to the end of the lesson. Nelson Mandela, A Long Walk to Freedom. Remember that the story is not just a biography of Mandela or an excerpt from Mandela's life. It's a lesson that has got a lot of values enveloped in it. A lot of values. Value number one: be a good human being in life. You may be earning in crores. You may be earning billions, trillions. How does that matter if you are not good at heart? Number two, if as a human being you do not have the grace of spreading love and respect around, what kind of a human being are you? And third and most important thing, never try to judge a book by its cover. Important. A person may not look very handsome, but still that person deserves respect because he may be skilled in some other manner. A person might not look courageous, but remember, whenever there is any state of adversity, that same person might be courageous enough to come and fight for something, for a social cause, I mean. Therefore, these three lessons that Mandela tries to give to all the human beings are to be noted. With that, we come to the end of the lecture as well. I hope you liked the lecture. You may come back to me with your doubts if you have on this particular topic. Till then, thank you very much. Hari Om.